Alana Doles was new in town, having moved in just before the school year began, but she had secrets she rather didn't tell. At first, she was indistinguishable from the rest of the middle school crowd, trying to find her place and make new friends. However, as weeks turned into months, something about Alana began to change. It was subtle at first, a withdrawn demeanor, a fleeting shadow across her normally bright face. People attributed it to the stress of adapting to a new environment, but the truth was something far deeper, something that hadn't yet surfaced. The buses that roamed the streets of the small town were more than just a mode of transport. They were a hub of social interaction and keen observation. It was here, amidst the chatter and laughter of commuting students, that the keen eyes of Mr. Jenkins, the veteran bus driver, noticed something amiss. Alana, who usually kept to herself in the back seat, had her sleeves rolled up due to the unseasonably warm weather, revealing a series of words scribed onto her arm. The bus rumbled along, but Mr. Jenkins's thoughts were elsewhere, piecing together the significance of the sighting. The words were hard to distinguish from his vantage point, but the mere presence of them sparked concern. Once the bus reached the school, Mr. Jenkins made a decision. He couldn't shake off the unease that had settled over him since spotting the writing on Alana's arm. With the last of the kids filing out, he dialed 911, explaining his concern to the dispatcher with a voice weighed down by the responsibility of the well-being of the children in his charge. The response was swift. Officers arrived at the scene and started looking for who was responsible. Armed with the information and guided by protocols on youth safety, they approached the school administration, who facilitated an immediate and discreet checkup on Alana. At the same time, unaware of the unfolding situation, Alana's father received a call that every parent dreads. He was informed of the concerns raised by Mr. Jenkins and the ongoing response at the school. Fearing a misunderstanding, he rushed over, confusion and concern etching his features. The confrontation that ensued was born out of a father's protective instincts, clashing with the procedural diligence of the officers. Tempers flared, misunderstandings escalated, and in the midst of it all, Alana's father found himself in handcuffs. He pleaded his innocence, but it wasn't until Alana stepped in to defend her father that they realized they had made a grave mistake. Andrew Jenkins grew up in a small, dilapidated house on the outskirts of a rundown neighborhood. His parents, hard-working but perpetually struggling, did their best to provide for Andrew and his two younger sisters. Despite their efforts, there were many nights when dinner was sparse, and Andrew often wore hand-me-down clothes that barely fit. From a young age, Andrew understood the value of hard work. He picked up odd jobs around the neighborhood, mowing lawns and shoveling snow to help his family make ends meet. He excelled in school, not just academically, but also on the football field, where his tenacity and teamwork shone brightly. However, the lack of resources often meant he had to work twice as hard to achieve half as much. After high school, with college out of reach financially, Andrew decided to join the Army. He saw it as an opportunity to serve his country, gain valuable skills, and perhaps find a way to lift his family out of poverty. Basic training was tough, but Andrew's resilience saw him through. He quickly rose through the ranks, earning the respect of his peers and superiors alike. Andrew served multiple tours overseas, witnessing the horrors of war and the bonds of brotherhood that came with it. The experiences changed him, molding him into a man of quiet strength and deep compassion, but they also left scars, both physical and emotional, that he would carry for the rest of his life. When his service ended, Andrew returned home to a hero's welcome. But the transition to civilian life was anything but smooth. Job opportunities were scarce, and the skills he honed in the military didn't translate easily to the workforce. He struggled to find steady employment, taking on whatever work he could find, from construction to security jobs, but nothing seemed to stick. The bills piled up, and Andrew often found himself lying awake at night, wondering how he would make it through another month. It wasn't until he applied for a position as a school bus driver that things began to change. The job didn't pay much, but it offered stability and a sense of purpose. Andrew quickly became a beloved figure in the community, known for his kindness and the way he looked out for the kids on his bus. He took pride in his work, ensuring each child got to school safely and on time. Driving that bus, Andrew found a new rhythm to his life. The steady routine and the smiles of the children helped heal some of the wounds left by his past. He became a fixture in the neighborhood, a symbol of perseverance and dedication. And though he still faced challenges, Andrew Jenkins finally felt like he was home. A smile was brought to Andrew's face every time he opened the bus doors, and a child would hop on board. He loved driving the kids to and from school, finding joy in their laughter and the innocent chatter that filled the bus each morning. No one would believe that the now harmless bus driver used to be a hardened soldier. But that also meant that he could protect the children if it ever came down to it. One day, everything would change, even if Mr. Jenkins, as the kids called him, didn't know it yet. It started out like an ordinary day when a girl that Mr. Jenkins had never seen entered the bus. She had big, curious eyes and clutched her backpack nervously. Before letting her sit down, he asked her name and a bit about her. Her name was Alana Doles, and she had just moved to the school. He welcomed her warmly and reassured her that she'd be okay. Over the next few weeks, Andrew got used to seeing Alana hop on the bus every morning. She was quiet but polite, always offering a shy smile when she boarded. Unfortunately, Andrew had no idea that one day he'd notice a change in her behavior, one that hinted that something at home was very wrong. Alana, who had always been punctual and neatly dressed, started coming to the bus stop looking disheveled and tired. Her usually bright eyes were often red-rimmed, and there were days when she seemed distant, lost in her own world. Andrew's instincts, honed from years in the army, told him something was amiss. He began to pay closer attention, watching for any signs that could confirm his suspicions. One morning, as Alana boarded the bus, he noticed a bruise peeking out from under the sleeve of her sweater. His heart sank, but he knew he had to approach the situation delicately. "Hey, Alana," he said gently as she took her usual seat near the front. "How are you doing today?" She shrugged, avoiding his gaze. "I'm fine, Mr. Jenkins." He nodded, deciding not to press her too hard right away. Over the next few days, he made a point to engage her in small conversations, trying to build her trust. He learned that her family had moved frequently, and she didn't have many friends. Her father worked long hours, and her mother seemed distant and preoccupied. One particularly cold morning, Alana didn't show up at the bus stop. Andrew's worry deepened, but he had a route to complete. As he drove through the neighborhood, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. When Alana finally got on the bus the next day, she looked worse than ever. Her movements were slow, and she flinched when someone accidentally bumped into her. Andrew knew he couldn't ignore the signs any longer. After dropping the kids off at school, he thought about how he could help her. He didn't want to see a punctual and bright-eyed student's future collapse in front of his eyes. Alana needed some kind of help, but he also didn't want to get her into trouble. After getting a favor from the school administrator, he had his hands on Alana's father's number. He called it and asked to meet with him. The father, initially hesitant, agreed. While Andrew had some downtime, he visited the father, who took a lunch break. They met outside of Alana's home, But that's where Andrew's speculations were only confirmed. Alana's home didn't look well kept. The screen panel door was practically falling off, and the front yard hadn't been tended to in years. The once vibrant house now looked more like an abandoned relic, echoing neglect and decay. The father seemed defensive and dismissed Andrew's concerns. He was a tall, gaunt man with sunken eyes and a weary expression, as if the weight of the world rested on his shoulders. When Andrew mentioned Alana's recent changes and his observations, the father's face hardened. "She's fine," he said curtly. "Kids go through phases." Andrew pressed gently, trying to convey his genuine concern without sounding accusatory. "I just want to make sure everything's okay. Alana's a great kid, and I've noticed she seems a bit off lately." The father's defensiveness turned into irritation. "We're doing the best we can. It's been tough since her mother left, but we're managing. I don't need anyone sticking their nose in our business." After the meeting was over, Andrew didn't feel like he got through to the dad. He seemed distracted and angry, more concerned about ending the conversation than addressing Alana's well-being. What was really going on? Andrew couldn't shake the feeling that something more sinister was at play. He knew he had to tread carefully, but also couldn't abandon Alana. He decided to gather more information, discreetly observing and talking to those who might know more about Alana's situation. He spoke with her teachers and found out that Alana's grades had been slipping, and she often appeared exhausted in class. The teachers, too, had noticed the change, but hadn't put the pieces together. Then something happened. Alana didn't get on the bus to go home that day. Despite Andrew's concerns, he couldn't let all the other kids on the bus be late. He reluctantly drove them home, thinking about where the student could be. That evening, as Andrew was locking up the bus after his route, he spotted Alana walking home alone. He decided to follow her from a distance, ensuring she got home safely. He kept his distance so he wouldn't be found. He noticed she took a longer route, avoiding certain streets and frequently looking over her shoulder as if she was afraid of something or someone. As Andrew followed Alana through the streets, he wondered where she was going. This wasn't the normal route home. She could have gotten home much sooner if she had taken a direct route, but the student seemed to be avoiding something or someone. The winding path she took made Andrew's concern grow deeper. He kept a respectful distance, not wanting to alarm her, but his instincts told him something was very wrong. That was when the concerned bus driver saw everything he needed to act. Alana, looking over her shoulder, walked into a tattoo parlor. Andrew's mind raced with questions. Did her father work there, maybe? Was she seeking solace in a place that promised distraction? He waited outside, watching the door intently. Just minutes later, Alana walked back out and headed further down the street. Andrew's heart pounded as he followed her to an even worse place, a liquor store. The garish neon sign flickered above the entrance, casting an eerie glow on the sidewalk. Andrew's pulse quickened. What was she doing here? After a minute or two, Alana emerged from the store with a six-pack of beer clutched in her small hands. She looked around nervously before heading back in the direction of her home. Andrew's spine shivered at what he had seen. This was not normal behavior for a girl her age, and it confirmed his fears that something was seriously wrong in her life. Andrew knew he had to intervene, but he needed to tread carefully. He didn't want to spook Alana or make her feel like she was in trouble. He decided to approach her gently the next morning, hoping to understand more about her situation. The following day, as Alana boarded the bus, Andrew greeted her with his usual warm smile, but added a touch of concern in his voice. "Good morning, Alana. Everything okay with you today?" She nodded, but her eyes betrayed her anxiety. "Yeah, Mr. Jenkins, I'm fine." Despite the girl telling Andrew that she was fine, he caught a glimpse of something on her arm protruding from underneath her sleeve. It was unmistakable. Black ink on her porcelain skin. Alarm bells went off in his head. Had she really gotten a tattoo? She was only 12, and she bought beer and got tattoos. Andrew may have only been the school bus driver, but he couldn't let anything happen to her. With a heavy heart, he made up his mind. He would wait until the next day to act on it. That night, Andrew hardly slept. His thoughts were consumed with worry for Alana. He replayed the events of the day over and over in his mind, trying to piece together what might be happening in her life. The tattoo, the beer, the fear in her eyes, it all pointed to something seriously wrong. He knew he had to act, but he also knew he had to do it carefully to ensure Alana's safety. The next morning, Andrew arrived at the bus depot earlier than usual. He prepared his bus, checking everything meticulously, but his mind was elsewhere. When he finally started his route, he couldn't shake the nervous energy buzzing inside him. As he approached Alana's stop, he took a deep breath, readying himself for what he needed to do. Alana climbed aboard, and Andrew greeted her with his usual warm smile. "Good morning, Alana. How are you today?" She nodded and offered a faint smile. "I'm fine, Mr. Jenkins." He had gotten used to that phrase by now. The rest of the kids boarded, and he dropped her off. But this time, he would confront Alana once and for all. As she walked past him to get off, Andrew gently touched her arm. "Alana, can I talk to you for a moment before you leave?" She looked up at him, eyes wide with a mix of curiosity and apprehension. "Sure." Andrew lowered his voice, speaking softly so the other children wouldn't hear. "I noticed something on your arm yesterday. It looked like a tattoo. I just want to make sure everything is okay. You can trust me." Alana's eyes filled with tears, and she looked away, ashamed. Andrew knew he had caught her red-handed. Alana knew her secret was out. Andrew waited to hear what she would say. "I just got this because I like the way it looked," she said, as she pulled her sleeve up. Just as he had suspected, there was a tattoo on her arm that read, "Peace and Love," in big letters. Andrew knew what he had to do. He called Alana's father, but he also called 911. Both raced to the school while he sat with her, trying to get more answers out of the girl. "Alana, why did you get that tattoo?" he asked gently. Before she could explain, both parties arrived. Her father rushed in, his face a mixture of concern and anger. "Alana, what's going on?" The police were even more concerned. They detained her father on suspicion of child mistreatment, a look of confusion and fear crossing his face. But then Alana spilled everything. "It's not permanent, don't worry," she said, quickly showing the police and Andrew that she could rub it off. It was only a temporary transfer that the tattoo parlor sold. Andrew was relieved, but he still had questions. "What about the beer I saw you buy?" Alana looked down, her voice barely above a whisper. "I bought that for my dad. I could see how upset he's been lately, so I thought it would cheer him up." Things changed in a heartbeat. Initially, the father seemed like a bad influence, but as he explained how hard things had been after they moved just a few months ago, everyone's heart softened. He recounted the painful story of how Alana's mother had passed away at the beginning of the school year, leaving both father and daughter in a state of grief and turmoil. He had been struggling to cope, and in his attempts to manage his pain, he had overlooked how it affected Alana. "I know it looks bad," Alana's father said, his voice breaking. "But I never wanted to hurt her. I didn't know how to handle losing my wife. I've been so lost. And Alana has been trying to be strong for me. I didn't realize how much pressure she was under." The police, seeing the sincerity in his words and the temporary nature of the tattoo, decided to handle the situation with care. They offered to connect Alana's father with support services to help him cope with his loss and manage his responsibilities as a single parent. Andrew felt a wave of relief and a deep sense of compassion for the struggling family. He realized that sometimes what appears to be a dangerous situation can stem from a place of deep pain and confusion. The authorities released Alana's father, but not without ensuring he had access to grief counseling and other resources to help him and his daughter heal. Over the next few months, Andrew continued to keep an eye on Alana. She gradually improved, her demeanor brightening as she felt the support and love surrounding her. Knowing that she wasn't alone and that people cared about her well-being made a significant difference. Her father, with the help of counseling, began to recover from his grief and became more attentive and supportive of Alana. The school also stepped in to provide additional support for Alana, offering counseling and after-school programs to help her stay engaged and connected. The community rallied around them, showing the true power of collective care and empathy. Andrew's role in uncovering the misunderstanding became a turning point for him as well. He realized the profound impact he could have on the children he transported every day. He continued his job with renewed dedication, always ready to notice the little signs that might indicate a child needed help. Despite the tragedy that had struck Alana and her father, time and support began to heal their wounds. The bond between Andrew and Alana grew stronger, and he remained a steadfast figure in her life, offering guidance and a listening ear whenever she needed it. In the end, the experience underscored the importance of community, empathy, and vigilance. It showed that sometimes a misunderstanding can lead to an opportunity for deeper understanding and support. Alana and her father found their way through the darkness, guided by the kindness and attention of those around them, proving that even in the face of adversity, healing and hope are always possible.